Something seems to be leveling the ship.
The early 1970s, when I was around 10 to 12 years old, The Adventures of Superman started being re-aired on television during weekend afternoons. It was the moment I looked forward to the most when the music played and George Reeves in his red and blue suit flew across the sky, fought evil, and brought peace to the world. That moment made me and my friends truly believe that superheroes were real, and Superman was the embodiment of a hero. But the deeper I dug into the behind-the-scenes stories, the more I discovered strange details that I had no idea about as a kid. Did you know the Superman costume once nearly exploded on set? Or that George Reeves once called this role the bottom of his career? And what about the mysterious curse, the wartime censorship restrictions? Or how the flying scenes were created using nothing but suspended wires and a steel table? All of it just ordinary stories hiding behind the superhero cape. And today we'll delve into the little-known behind-the-scenes secrets of The Adventures of Superman, where the superhero's image begins to crumble. 20. The Superman suit exploded. As a childhood fan of Superman, I was always fascinated by the scenes where George Reeves ran into fire to save people, his red cape fluttering through the smoke and flames completely unharmed. At that time, the whole world believed he truly was the Man of Steel. But few people know that the very iconic Superman suit once exploded right on set. It was an ordinary shooting day, like any other, with blazing lights casting white heat onto the old wooden floor. Reeves was acting in a scene where he charged through artificial flames, thick smoke billowing around. Suddenly, from the collar of the cape, a small wisp of smoke slipped out, then quickly turned into a flame licking his shoulder. It wasn't an effect, just old fabric lights too hot and a bit of prop chemicals from those days that easily caught fire. The entire set went silent for a few seconds, then screams broke out. Crew members rushed over holding fire extinguishers, faces pale. Reeves stood still, head slightly bowed, trying to remain calm while the fire licked close to his skin. Luckily, the flame only burned lightly and he suffered just a few painful burns, no serious injuries. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but the atmosphere remained heavy. Everyone realized that 1950s television was still too handmade, with risks lurking at every moment. After the incident, the crew hurried to reinforce the suit with heat-resistant material. That scene was completely cut and never aired. 19. The Superman Curse. Few people know that most actors who played Superman experienced heavy misfortunes after leaving the role. People began whispering about a curse dating back to the end of the black and white series. The worst curse befell George Reeves, the first Superman. He once dreamed of serious roles after his small part in Gone with the Wind, but Superman came and held him back forever. The role brought him the love of millions of children, but also completely boxed him in. Reeves gradually fell into deep depression, feeling this was the bottom of his career with no way out. In 1959, he was found dead in his bedroom from a gunshot wound to the head. To this day, there is still fierce debate over whether it was suicide, accident, or even murder. Years later, tragedy continued with Christopher Reeve, the Superman of the color film generation. In 1995, a horse riding accident left him paralyzed from the neck down, having to live dependent on a ventilator for the rest of his life. Young Lee Quigley, who played the infant Superman in the 1978 film, died at just 14 years old after inhaling toxic solvent fumes. Other actors were luckier, not facing such major misfortunes, but their careers also quietly faded, their roles gradually forgotten. Is that a curse? What do you think about this? Let's discuss below this video. 18. Some episodes were banned for being too violent for children.
Stupid fools, he tricked you.
I'm amazed that any of you thought that display of fireworks bothered me. Or that I couldn't get out of this room if I wanted to.
If in the comics, action scenes and fighting evil were the most exciting things for kids, then in the television version, parents were terrified of them. In the 1950s, television had just entered the home and parents were still worried their children would imitate what they saw on the black and white screen. In the first season, the series still had a film noir vibe and the violence was quite realistic. In The Evil 3, criminals locked people in damp basements, brutally tortured them, and even killed them coldly. The scene where water rose up to a victim's neck shocked many parents. Or in Crime Wave, a scene where criminals wildly shot guns in the street, victims collapsed. And though blood wasn't clearly shown, it was enough to leave haunting impressions. Some other episodes featured intense hand-to-hand fights with Superman grappling fiercely and the sound of bones cracking. Complaint letters flooded the station. My child used a stick to pretend it was a gun and shot his friend. The program teaches kids to be violent. Kellogg's, the main sponsor, watched the first season and immediately demanded a reduction to maintain a wholesome image. And so, a few episodes were quietly pulled from regular reruns and shelved. Today, those heavy episodes have become rare collector's items. 17. Reeves nearly died while filming a flying scene. To achieve the smooth flying scenes seen on screen, Reeves had to pay with his own life. When I was a child, every time Superman soared through the sky with his red cape fluttering, my friends and I would hold our breath, staring at the black and white screen, believing he truly could fly. In reality, flying scenes at the time relied solely on crude cables hanging from the ceiling. Reeves wore a heavy suit, was lifted a few meters high, then released to fly forward. No backup safety ropes, no modern air cushions. Just a thin mattress laid on an old concrete floor. One day during filming in the second season, the cable suddenly snapped. Reeves fell freely, hitting the floor hard, the thud echoing sharply, leaving the whole set frozen. Everyone rushed over, fearing he'd broken his neck, or worse. Luckily, he only suffered severe bruises and pain for a few days. After that, Reeves firmly refused to be suspended again. The crew had to hire a stuntman for dangerous scenes, then gradually switched to simpler methods. Reeves lay flat on a low steel table filmed from below with blue skies and white clouds added in post-production. Most of the later beautiful flying scenes were reused from a few earlier shots to save budget. 16. Reeves considered the Superman role the bottom of his career. Before donning the cape, George Reeves had once stood among the supporting cast of Gone with the Wind, dreaming of serious roles beside Clark Gable or Vivian Leigh. He had an elegant demeanour and a warm, deep voice. He should have gone much further. But Superman arrived in 1952 and changed everything. The role turned him into a symbol for children, but also boxed him in permanently. Hollywood directors saw only Superman in him and didn't dare assign him any other roles. Reeves gradually became disheartened, feeling this was the bottom of his career. Not because the role was bad, but because it was too big, swallowing up every remaining opportunity. Depression quietly crept in. He smiled, less often sat alone on set. In 1959, when he suddenly passed away, the series ended immediately. No new season, no replacement. For Reeves, Superman was both a gift and a burden. Looking back now, we realise the higher the symbol, the longer its shadow overshadowing a career that could have been much more brilliant. 15. The two Superman creators sold the rights for just $130 US. In 1938, two young men, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, sat in a poor rented room in Cleveland and created the world's strongest character. They brought Superman to National Allied Publications. Later, DC signed a full sale contract for $130 and a stable job. They thought it was a big opportunity, a monthly salary, names on the comic cover. But contracts back then didn't grant them ownership rights. Superman generated millions of dollars through comics, radio cartoons, toys, while Siegel and Schuster only received regular employee wages. They sued DC multiple times from the 1940s to the 1970s, but lost them all. Late in life, thanks to public pressure and a fan campaign, DC finally agreed to pay a small pension and credited the two as creators on all Superman publications. The copyright battle lasted into the 2000s as their families continued to claim rights. In the end, even the greatest idea can be sold far too cheaply if caught in harsh times. Superman flew high, but the two men who gave birth to him had to struggle their entire lives just to be recognized. 14. The US government censored Superman during World War II. Though rarely mentioned, even Superman was once censored by the US government during World War II. At the time, comic books were a major source of entertainment for both children and soldiers, and Superman issues about fighting evil were eagerly awaited each week. In 1943 to 1944, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster wrote a side story in which Superman faced an enemy using an atomic bomb, a nuclear weapon that was still only science fiction to the public. They described in detail the chain reaction, massive energy, even primitive methods of construction. The manuscript was sent to the publisher, then to the US War Department for wartime censorship as required. Just a few days later, the order came back: indefinite delay of publication. Some pages related to nuclear science were ordered to be completely removed. The reason wasn't clearly stated, but everyone understood the Manhattan Project, the real US atomic bomb development program, was in its most top-secret phase. The government feared that even a comic book could accidentally leak sensitive information to spies. Superman, powerful enough to be faster than a speeding bullet, stronger than a locomotive, still had to step aside for national security. 13. How Superman flew before special effects existed. Every time Superman soared across the sky on the black and white screen cape billowing, we kids would glue our eyes to the screen believing real magic existed. But behind those flying scenes was an astonishingly manual system. No computers, no green screens. The crew relied solely on cables hanging from the ceiling, a low steel table placed on the floor, and large fans to blow hair and cape. Reeves would jump from a high platform, launch himself forward, then land on a thin mat. The camera angle from below created the illusion of flight. For stronger wind, they even used old jet engines to blow air. The sound of rushing wind and flying dust filled the small studio. Many beautiful shots were filmed only once, then reused across episodes to save the tight budget. Sometimes sharp-eyed viewers noticed the same white cloud repeating. Yet it was that very crudeness that laid the foundation for every superhero flight scene since, from more complex wire systems to wire few, and finally to CGI. Looking back now, those old-fashioned flying scenes still hold a unique charm because they were made with sweat and a bit of real risk, not just the push of a computer button. 12. Lois Lane had the first female stunt double on television. Lois Lane at that time was often seen as the girl waiting to be rescued, but Noel Neill didn't just stand there and look pretty. Many scenes required real action, and she paved the way for female stunt doubles on television. In early episodes, Lois had to jump from tall buildings, hang suspended on wires, fall onto pads, or run through artificial smoke and fire. Neill performed well in dialogue scenes, but for dangerous action, the crew for the first time hired a professional female stunt performer. A rare thing in the 1950s when women on TV rarely did anything other than cry and wait for the hero. The stunt woman wore the same style dress, a wig like Neil's, and performed the jumping diving scenes. From a distance, audiences didn't notice. This was a small but important step initiating the image of strong, action-oriented women to come, from Charlie's Angels to Wonder Woman. Neil later recalled with a smile she liked doing some of the scenes herself, but safety came first. Looking back now, those crude action scenes helped change how television portrayed women, not just as victims, but sometimes as the brave ones stepping into danger. 11. There was almost a new actor replacing Reeves. Between the long filming seasons, rumours spread that George Reeves was growing tired of playing Superman and wanted to return to serious films. The studio grew nervous and secretly tested a replacement option. They invited a few other actors to the set, had them try on the suit, and filmed a few short scenes from distant or blurry close-up angles. The idea was that if Reeves quit the series, could continue without the audience noticing right away. But the plan didn't get far before letters from viewers flooded the station like an avalanche. Children and parents wrote by hand, "No one can replace Mr. Reeves. There is only one Superman." Some letters even threatened to stop watching if the actor was changed. Under intense pressure, the studio decided to keep Reeves until the end. He continued in the role though, with lingering doubts inside. This incident set a clear precedent. Replacing a superhero actor is never simple. Audiences had bonded too deeply with that familiar face, with that warm voice. Later on, every time Hollywood recast Batman or James Bond, similar backlash followed. As for the 1952 Superman, Reeves stayed until the final episode, partly because of the audience's love and partly because he himself couldn't bring himself to abandon the boy in the cape who millions of children were waiting for each week. 10. Kids jumped off rooftops thinking a cape would make them fly. Back then, Superman's red cape was the best-selling toy in America. Millions were sold, and once a child put it on, they'd run into the yard, stretch their arm out in flying pose, shouting, "Up, up and away." But that innocent belief sometimes led to accidents no one expected. Many children believed that the cape alone was enough to fly like on TV. Some climbed onto garage roofs, low rooftops, and jumped straight down thinking they'd glide through the air. Some ended up with broken arms or legs or even worse. Newspapers of the time sporadically reported on Superman accidents, and worried parents sent complaint letters to the station and the toy manufacturer. George Reeves, who saw firsthand the impact of his role, couldn't sit still. He personally contacted the company and asked them to stop selling capes separately, only as part of the full costume to reduce risks. The company complied, even though it cost them a large portion of revenue. Reeves later said in interviews that he didn't want any child to get hurt just because they believed in his hero. Few actors at that time dared to intervene directly in commercial products out of concern for child safety. Looking back, Reeves's action feels even more heartwarming. A man who understood the line between fiction and reality and chose to protect the most vulnerable hearts. 9. Superman's muscles were mostly made of foam padding. Everyone thought George Reeves must have been a real bodybuilder to fit that tight suit. In truth, he was indeed strong, but to achieve the perfect physique, like in the comics, the crew still had to stuff foam padding into the chest, shoulders and stomach. Under the blazing hot lights of a 1950s set, the foam turned into a mobile heater. Reeves stood for hours, sweat pouring out, the suit soaked and heavy, his movements stiff. The flying pose, arms forward, chest out, became even harder because the padding threw off his balance. One time he had to stop mid-scene due to feeling faint from the heat. But Reeves never complained. He endured it all, just so kids watching TV would believe they were looking at a real superhero. He once joked with the crew, If the kids knew Superman was made of sponge, they'd be really disappointed. Those old foam pads are now preserved in a museum as a testament to the silent sacrifices of an actor who wanted to protect childhood belief. 8. Hollywood once planned a Jimmy Olsen spin-off. After George Reeves' sudden death in 1959, the series faced the threat of permanent cancellation. Producers didn't want to lose the revenue, so they quietly devised a rescue plan through a spin-off focused on Jimmy Olsen, the cheerful young reporter. The idea was to reuse all old scenes with Superman film new ones with Jimmy and use stand-ins from afar or obscured angles so Reeves could still appear. That way the series could continue without the original Superman. They even shot a few short test clips to present to the sponsors. But Jack Larson, who played Jimmy Olsen, read the script and refused immediately. He told the producers outright this show belongs to George. Without him, it's not Superman anymore. Larson firmly declined, even though it could have extended his own career. The spin-off plan was scrapped and the series officially ended. That action by Larson is now seen as truly admirable, a rare act of loyalty in Hollywood where profits usually come before everything else. He chose to preserve the beautiful memory of a lost colleague instead of prolonging a hollow shadow. 7. Secret bar behind the wooden wall. A backstage staff member revealed that back then, to entertain the actors, the crew built a tiny secret bar right behind the set. Just a few wooden prop panels hastily arranged to make a hidden corner, a few old chairs placed crookedly, and a few small liquor bottles hidden under the floor. It wasn't a fancy place, just somewhere everyone could sit during breaks, sip warm liquor smoke, a cigarette, chat a bit about life to forget the heat of the lights. George Reeves usually sat there the longest back against the wall, telling stories of his earlier serious films. Noel Neill would drop by joking. Jack Larson cracked jokes that made everyone chuckle. The sound of fans and props outside drowned out, but in that little corner the mood lightened. At the time, TV had to maintain a perfectly clean image heroes without flaws. But behind the wall were real people, tired, sweating, needing a drink to hold on. Looking back, now that little bar was the warmest place in the series, where even Superman was allowed to be human to land for a few minutes before flying off again for us kids. 6. Kellogg's saved the show but controlled the content. Without Kellogg's, the series might have died after the second season. That big cereal sponsor pumped in money to keep the show alive through tight budgets, in exchange for Superman appearing in ads, his warm voice encouraging children to eat healthy breakfasts. But money never comes free. Kellogg's controlled every tiny detail to preserve a family image. They banned scenes of Superman eating breakfast at the same table with Lois Lane, even if it was just harmless cereal, because at the time, unmarried men and women sitting together were seen as too intimate, possibly suggesting inappropriate romance to children. The crew had to adjust scripts, avoiding any scene that could be misinterpreted. Reeves joked that he was the only superhero not allowed to eat breakfast with a co-worker. But they accepted it because without Kellogg's, there would be no series. That small detail now seems laughable, but it also shows how strict social standards were. Even powerful superheroes had to abide by the sponsor's wholesome rules just to maintain their place on 1950s home television. Beat, the opening theme became a cultural catchphrase. Just a few notes of music at the beginning. Adventures of Superman, and our whole generation of kids would cheer and run to the TV. That introduction didn't just start each episode, it entered our daily lives. Kids imitated it on the playground in class, even on the street. Faster than a speeding bullet became a common saying whenever someone ran fast. Posters, toys and radios all repeated it verbatim. At that time, there were no flashy trailers, but that theme and narration set the gold standard for how to introduce a superhero, from Batman 1966 to today's Marvel. It was short, heroic, memorable, and most importantly, It made children believe a real hero was flying toward them. Listening again now, just those few seconds, are enough to take me back to childhood, to the black and white TV and the thrill of anticipation. A simple cultural slogan, but one that lives on through generations, because it didn't just talk about Superman, it spoke of the belief we once had. 4. Superman once advertised peanut butter. Can you imagine Superman standing in a kitchen holding a jar of peanut butter and praising how tasty it is? At the time, besides the familiar Kellogg's cereal ads, he also appeared in a series of commercials for a famous peanut butter brand, his warm voice saying, "Eating this will give you strength like Superman." Sales skyrocketed instantly. Kids begged their parents to buy it just to be strong like the hero. This was one of the first times a superhero was commercialized so widely from radio to TV. Superman encouraged healthy eating in exchange for sponsorship money to keep the series alive. Not just peanut butter, he also advertised all sorts of things from vitamins to soap. It's funny to think of now, but those innocent ads paved the way for today's superhero merchandise industry. T-shirts, lunchboxes, toys, filling store shelves. Superman didn't just fly to save the world, he also flew into the wallets of millions of families. A very down-to-earth way for a hero to survive in the early age of television. 3. The Superman suit was completely different in reality. Looking at today's colour posters, everyone thinks the Superman costume was always bright red and blue. But on 1950s black and white TV, the actual colours were pale grey and brown to look better on screen. The hot studio lights turned red into pure black and blue into dull grey. The crew re-dyed the whole outfit, a brown top, grey pants, dark-coloured cape with only the S logo and trim made to stand out using reflective materials. Under white lighting, the suit created strong contrast and looked vibrant on the small screen. Reeves once joked he was autumn-coloured Superman. That small trick is now an interesting behind-the-scenes fact, reminding us that 1950s television had to fool the audience's eyes using whatever crude methods it could. When the series finally went to colour later on, the real red and blue outfit appeared, and viewers were surprised to find that their Superman actually looked different. 2. The Daily Planet set was batch filmed to save money. The Daily Planet office was always bustling on-screen typewriters, clacking reporters rushing around. But in reality, it was all just one single set reused throughout the entire season. With a tight budget, the crew filmed all the office scenes at once for multiple episodes. Actors often wore the same clothes week after week. Reeves with that tie, Neil with that dress. Audiences back then didn't notice much. To change the setting, they just rearranged desks, swapped nameplates, and replaced a few decorations to create a new room. Clever camera angles helped hide the repetition. That batch filming method saved time and money, but also created a familiar and warm feeling, as if the Daily Planet really existed. Watching again now, you can spot the same desk, the same window, but back then, who cared? It was the magic of low-budget TV, turning one corner of a room into a whole vibrant world of journalism. 1. Metropolis. From fiction to 100% real. We all know the city of Metropolis in the comics is fictional, but starting in the 1950s, a small town in Illinois declared itself the hometown of Superman. Metropolis, Illinois built a 15-foot-tall statue of Superman in the town square, opened a museum preserving props from the old series, and held annual festivals with people parading in capes. The whole town thrived on that title souvenir shops, local newspapers reporting. Superman visits his hometown. Even the police wore S badges on their sleeves like official insignias. They didn't wait for DC's approval, just embraced the hero who brought joy to so many childhoods. Today, tourists still come to take photos by the statue, feeling a bit of magic from the pages brought to life. A small town proving that sometimes beautiful fiction can become real, if there are people willing to believe and keep it alive through the years. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you won't miss our next videos. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next video.